At 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Very good evening to you. 6 o'clock here in the GB newsroom. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Our headlines. Reform UK is calling for Chancellor Rachel Reeves to be investigated over potential breaches of the ministerial code. Nigel Farage has written to the Prime Minister's ethics advisor saying her behaviour before and during the budget meets the threshold for an inquiry. The Chancellor has denied accusations of misleading the country with an overly pessimistic view of the country's finances in order to raise taxes, despite the Office for Budget Responsibility saying it informed the Treasury there was a budget surplus rather than a black hole. However, the Chancellor is adamant tax rises were necessary to deliver stability for the country.
Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers. I've now delivered the budget. That budget is consistent with the speech that I made at the beginning of November to cut the cost of living, to cut NHS waiting lists and to cut the debt and the deficit. I said in that speech that everyone would need to contribute, but I kept that contribution as low as possible by asking those with the broadest shoulders.
Just for the record, would you welcome an investigation that could draw a line under this, whether you misled the markets and taxpayers or not?
I don't think that that is necessary. The Office of Budget Responsibility have published their numbers.
The new left-wing movement, known as Your Party's, voted against having a single leader, opting instead for a collective model. It's a setback to Jeremy Corbyn, who previously said he backed the sole leader model and would stand for the position. And members voted to put a committee in charge that MPs will be barred from standing for, and also confirmed the party name. The collective model has been supported by Mr Corbyn's rival and co-founder Zara Sultana. The US Secretary of State says he expects talks with Ukrainian officials taking place in Florida to yield progress in bringing an end to Russia's war. Marco Rubio, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner have been meeting a delegation from Kyiv to discuss Washington's proposed framework, which critics say favours Russia. Further talks between the US and Vladimir Putin are expected in Moscow next week. At least 6 people were killed and dozens more wounded across Ukraine this weekend as a result of Russian attacks. And the former West Ham captain and manager Billy Bonds has died at the age of 79. The defender and midfielder holds the club's all-time record for most appearances of 799 games for the Hammers between 1967 and 1988, as well as captaining the side to FA Cup victories in 1975 and 1980. He managed the club for 4 years between 1990 and 1994. And those are your headlines. I'll be back with more at 7.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. We've had the biggest event of the political year, that's right, the budget. And what a week it's been. We've got a bumper show lined up with reaction from a leading businessman and all three major parties. From the government, Treasury Minister James Murray will join me. How does he respond to the growing accusations that Rachel Reeves misled the House and the British public as well as the markets as justification for her tax hiking budget? One critics say rewards shirkers rather than workers, and can she really stay in post? For the opposition, I'll be speaking to Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch for her response. Can the Tories really criticise the budget given the state of the economy that they left behind? Plus, I'll be speaking to the Lib Dems Treasury spokesperson Daisy Cooper to get her party's reaction. I'll also be asking her why the Lib Dems are so determined to attack Nigel Farage rather than holding the government to account. And while we're on the subject of Nigel Farage, we'll be joined by Reform UK's Deputy Leader Richard Tice. We'll hear his response to serious allegations this week concerning his leader's alleged anti-Semitic behaviour at Dulwich School, alongside, of course, his take on the budget. As ever, another packed 90 minutes to come, so do not even think of going anywhere. Welcome back. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, joins me now. Mr Murray, lovely to see you.
Good morning.
It's great to see you as ever, because you often come in here and take one for the team. But where's the Chancellor?
Well, the Chancellor's been giving some other interviews this morning, and
Yes.
she'll be working today, as she does every day of the week.
It's unbelievable, isn't it, that in the nearly 3 years I've done this show, she hasn't once appeared.
Well, I hope you like having me on the show, and I work very closely with the Chancellor.
It's a really critical weekend, isn't it? And GB News listeners and viewers pay tax. They've now been saddled with ever higher bills, seemingly on the basis of a lie. So let me ask you this, Mr Murray. What was the bigger con, the Chancellor's CV or this budget?
No, look, what this budget set out to do was to cut the cost of living, keep cutting NHS waiting lists and cut government borrowing, and that's exactly what it did. Now, that meant that we had to take some decisions, the right and necessary decisions, but decisions when it came to taxation. But we did that in a way that kept the burden on working people as low as possible. And that meant that we were able to, as I said, cut the cost of living with £150 of energy bills, to keep cutting NHS waiting lists and to cut government borrowing. Because at the moment, £1 in £10 of taxpayers' money is spent servicing the interest from debt.
Yes.
That's got to change, and that's what this budget set out to do.
Right, OK. Let's just get down to the nuts and bolts of this. We've got a Chancellor who lied in her CV. We then got a Chancellor who lied in the manifesto saying that taxes wouldn't go up. Taxes have gone up. We then had a lie that they wouldn't be imposed on working people. Now she's been revealed to have lied about the reason for putting tax up. So it was a complete and utter deceit, not just of Parliament, not just of the markets, but of the general public, in claiming that you had to put taxes up because you had this black hole that didn't actually exist. There was no black hole because the OBR had turned round to the Chancellor on October the 31st and said, actually, you're more than £4 billion in surplus. Why did she lie about the existence of a black hole?
She didn't. And
Yes,
I
she
reject your claims. And can I tell you why? Let me tell you why. Because what the OBR set out at the end of October in their forecast, firstly, it set out clearly that there had been a productivity downgrade of £16 billion. Now, going into the budget process, we also knew we wanted to get headroom up, and that headroom is critical to helping to get the cost of government borrowing and to getting mortgages down. So we went into the budget with those priorities, and the Chancellor set them out. She set out in her speech in early November that we needed more headroom, that everyone was going to be asked to make a contribution, and that our priorities in the budget would be to cut the cost of living, cut NHS waiting lists, and cut that government borrowing.
But she didn't put this down on the 4th of November when she held that emergency speech early in the morning. Kemi Badenoch referenced it in her response to the budget. You know, we are interrupting your Cheerios with this dire announcement. She said there'd been a productivity downgrade.
Which there had been, of £16 billion.
OK, and she claimed, and you have all claimed, that there was this black hole A black hole in Britain's finances. There isn't a black hole in Britain's finances if the OBR has turned round to the Chancellor 4 days before she made this scaremongering speech and told her actually she's 4.2 billion in surplus. She could have said, I want to increase my fiscal headroom, therefore I need to increase taxes. She didn't say that, so she's lied to the public, she's lied to Parliament, and she has misled the markets, which is a very serious offence.
I'm sorry, I really have to jump in here because look at what the Chancellor actually said in her speech in early November. You know, you're assigning phrases to what the Chancellor said. Look at what she actually said in her speech.
Officials let it be known that the OBR productivity downgrade would blow a hole of 20 billion or more in the Chancellor's fiscal plans. So are you now saying the officials are lying on behalf of the Chancellor? You're saying that officials didn't tell us that there was a 20 billion black hole in the finances. That was what was briefed by the Chancellor's own people. She said in her speech on the 4th of November, she played up the economy's dire state, nurturing expectations of a manifesto-breaking tax raid. We'll all have to contribute, she said. She said that the situation had changed. I'm sorry, she said, I can't account for this, what I would like the situation to be. I've got to account for what it is. But the situation was different to what she presented because she actually had £4.2 billion in the coffers, not a 20 billion black hole as had been briefed.
Look, I'm really glad you're giving me a chance to address exactly what the Chancellor said in that speech in early November. And what she said in that speech in early November was that everyone would have to make a contribution because there was an impact in terms of the productivity downgrade, the productivity review that the OBR was looking at. And she was clear that her priorities would be to cut NHS waiting lists, to cut the cost of living and to cut government borrowing. So she was very clear about the challenges that she was facing and the principles that she would approach the budget with. And may I say one more thing, because this is really important. Because imagine if I had been coming on your show this morning and we'd only had headroom of a few £1 billion, you would rightly say to me, James, that is completely unacceptable.
No, what's unacceptable?
That does not give you a buffer. That does not give us the protection we need in the public finances. What we needed to do was to get the headroom up, and that's exactly what we did.
Let's talk about what's unacceptable. What's unacceptable is for the public parliament and the markets to be misled with officials briefing about a 20 billion black hole. Things people the Chancellor blamed for black holes. Brexit, Donald Trump, Liz Truss. There was no black hole. You had 4.2 billion in the coffers and you didn't tell the public. Why didn't you tell the public?
I'm sorry, but
why didn't you tell the public about that surplus?
We were absolutely upfront with the public about the fact that there had been a productivity. We're absolutely upfront with the public about the challenges that we faced in early November.
Why didn't the Chancellor tell the public on November the 4th, 4 days after she'd been told by the OBR she had 4.2 billion in the coffers? Why didn't she tell anyone?
That was still an OBR forecast before any measures had been considered. So any measures had not been considered by that stage.
Why didn't she tell the public that she was in surplus, not in deficit at that point?
What she told the public...
And the PM knew this as well.
What we told the public was that we were facing challenges because of the OBR downgrading productivity, and what that forecast told us was that that was the case to the tune of £16 billion. So the productivity downgrade, which is the result of the mishandling of Brexit, of the austerity of the previous government, that had an impact on public finances to the tune of £16 billion. And we had to, and it was critical to us to increase the headroom. So you're selective with the information.
You are selective with the information that you are giving to the public, Parliament and the markets because you decide to keep secret the fact that the OBR had told the Chancellor she had 4.2 billion.
No, we said that the public finances...
When did you tell us you had 4.2 billion?
Look, the Chancellor, the government ministers...
You didn't tell us.
Government ministers do not give a running commentary of every round of forecasting.
Oh, they give a running commentary to justify tax rises.
They do not give a running commentary of the numbers.
So they tell the public the information they want to release, but don't tell the public that they've actually got £4.2 billion in the coffers.
So look, the budget process is an iterative process between the OBR and Treasury in terms of exchanging forecasts and figures and then measures from the Treasury. What the Chancellor chose to do in early November was to be upfront with people about the fact that we were facing a big hit because of productivity being reviewed, and that was the case to the tune of £16 billion, that we needed to increase headroom, that the headroom was really important.
But the OBR said in the end there was only a 2.6 billion, a 2.5 billion shortfall. You still haven't answered the question. Why did she keep the 4.2 billion she had in surplus secret?
That was part of the iterative process between the OBR and the Treasury, but she made very clear in early November the challenges that we face.
You understand that not revealing information is in itself misleading. Do you understand that?
She did.
Okay.
She did in early November say that we face these challenges. And she was clear about the challenges we face and the principles which you'd approach the budget with.
You've breached the manifesto because you've put taxes up, haven't you?
No.
What?
No.
Are you for real?
Yes.
You told the people in the manifesto, the Labour manifesto, that you are only going to put taxes up by 8.5 billion. You've actually, between the last budget and this budget, put it up by 66 billion, including 26 on Wednesday. And you're telling me you didn't breach the manifesto?
We said in the manifesto that we would keep taxes on working people as low as possible,
and
that's exactly what we've done.
Mr. Murray, you aren't seriously telling me that after a £26 billion tax raid, largely to pay for welfare, which is people on benefits, some of whom who work, many that don't, that you're not taxing working people in the budget?
No, we are asking working people to make a contribution.
So you are taxing working people?
We are asking working people
to make... So you've broken the manifesto?
No. Let me just explain this really clearly, right?
I think I've explained it clearly and you are obfuscating.
Can I respond to it? Because what we said in the budget, what the Chancellor was really upfront about, is that we are asking everyone to make a contribution through the extension of the freezers to thresholds. But we're also clear that we are keeping the tax burden on working people as low as we possibly can because of other changes that we've made.
That is an extraordinary fudge. You're saying that you can honour the manifesto commitment because you haven't directly put taxes up on working people, because you haven't actually put up income tax, even though she floated the idea on November the 4th, despite knowing that she had 4.2 billion in the coffers. And you're saying, no, it's not technically a tax rise because we're doing it by stealth, by freezing the thresholds for another 3 years.
No, I'm sorry. There's
26 billion in taxes on working people is a tax on working people.
There's no stealth tax if you say it there in Parliament what you're doing. She was completely upfront about what she was doing. The manifesto said we wouldn't increase the rates of income tax and national insurance on workers. We didn't do that. What the manifesto also said, what the manifesto also said, is we would keep the tax burden on working people as low as possible, and that's what we've done.
In Britain, who pays tax?
Well, people pay it on all sorts of things. People pay it on their work, people pay it on property income, people on dividends, people pay it on savings,
so
people pay it on the
tax.
property. There's
Should
lots
we
of
agree
different
on
things
this
people
one
tax
thing?
on.
Workers pay tax, correct? If the tax bill has gone up by 26 billion, workers are being taxed, aren't they, Mr. Murray?
We are asking everyone to make a contribution.
So you have broken the manifesto?
No, because the manifesto said we would not increase those rates of income tax and national insurance on working people, and that we would keep the tax burden on working people as low as possible.
The other lie in the manifesto and indeed the budget is the idea that you are in any way cutting welfare. Welfare is actually going up by another 70 billion, and by the end of the Parliament will be 403 billion. So you're doing nothing to cut benefits at all.
Well, look, we started...
The rebellion was just, showmanship.
We started the process of reforming welfare. Like earlier in the year, we agreed that we were going to change universal credit so it never pays to be off sick rather than in work. And then in the budget last week, we set out changes to Motability to make sure that people can't get a luxury car on that system.
Can we agree that the welfare bill will go up by the end of the Parliament, not down?
Well, what we can agree on, I hope, is that the welfare system needs to change. And that's what we're going to do over this Parliament.
Mr Murray, is the welfare bill going up or down by the end of the Parliament?
Well, the overall welfare bill as a proportion of GDP is broadly stable, but we need to make sure that it works. We need to make sure that it works, and it needs to change.
She said growth is my number one mission, growth at 1.5%.
Which is an upgrade from 1%.
James Murray, thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
There's a lot of tables out there that won't just have turkey on it. There'll be turkey and ham, and but I know some people that will cook 3 or 4 different meats. And obviously the joy of having turkey is that you can then make a turkey curry for Boxing Day and the subsequent days. So, you should be having days of curry after your turkey lunch. I think for the masses, it's still hugely popular. You know, through the festive period at the Dog, we will have hundreds of people having Christmas parties, and most of them will order our turkey lunch or dinner. And then Christmas Day, we could sell it probably 3 or 4 times. The demand for people to go out for the traditional turkey roast is still massive. But hey, look, if you don't like a roast lunch, then why force yourself to have it on the, you know, probably one of the most important meals of the day in terms of bringing family together.
What about Sophie's point, Mark, about cost and spending £30, £40 on turkey? That is simply too expensive for lots of people.
Yeah, I'll never be able to defend or debate that. You know, I know more than anyone the challenges around food inflation, and a good turkey has become a huge cost. But I still think where people can afford the tradition, the joy of coming together, sharing a big turkey roast meal it's a brilliant Christmas tradition. But yeah, the food inflation, that's something we've talked about a number of times, isn't it? You know, it's crippling our business and it's crippling people at homes. I suppose the key thing to look at is if you know what you're doing with it, a good turkey will feed the family for many days. It's not just one meal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Joining me now is the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper. We love seeing you on my show. The Lib Dems are sometimes reluctant to do GB News.
Oh, I'm not.
You're not.
I'm always here.
We're happy to see you, so thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now, I know you've been running from studio to studio. We just spoke to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. He seems to be saying that there's no problem that Rachel Reeves kept this £4.2 billion of surplus secret on November the 4th when she gave her, let's call it her scaremongering Cheerios speech, as we all now recognise it, early in the morning, warning that tax rises were coming because she just wanted to do that to increase her fiscal headroom. I then pointed out to him that it was a complete deceit and a lie to make out that there was a 20 billion black hole in the finances when there wasn't. He is trying to justify it as saying, well, the Chancellor has to make choices depending on the information she receives at the time. What's your reaction to that excuse? Because I didn't find it particularly credible. I made the point to Mr Murray, why didn't she tell us that we were 4.2 billion in surplus at the end of October?
Yeah. So I think the Chancellor has got some very serious questions to answer, and I really hope that she comes herself to Parliament tomorrow to answer questions from members of Parliament rather than sending another minister in her stead. Honestly, the government obviously is democratically elected. The government can make decisions. The government can make those choices. But I think that, if she's got one piece of information and then goes out and says that something else is happening, that's very destabilising for confidence of households and of the market. So she's got very serious questions to answer about why on earth she went out there to do that pre-budget speech, which is almost unheard of in this country. We don't have that system in place. I do think there are broader questions about whether the entire budget process is fit for purpose. I think it isn't. I think the public would benefit from there being far more transparency and to adopt a system where we see a draft budget and then we have proper debate over a period of time.
More transparency than we had over the last 6 weeks of pitch rolling of a budget. We're going to put up tax. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to freeze thresholds. Almost every aspect of that budget was leaked in some way or the other. Now, a previous Chancellor, Hugh Dalton, had to resign when he went to the pub with a journalist and leaked one aspect of the budget he was about to deliver. So you want more transparency. How much transparency do you want?
Look, I don't think leaks are transparency, because don't forget that amongst all those leaks, many of those leaks have come to pass, but many of them haven't. And so the public were left not knowing which taxes would go up, which ones wouldn't, whether there was going to be an overhaul of particular tax systems, whether other ones were going to be would just be left to have tinkering around the edges. What I would like to see is a budget that is published up front as a draft budget, rather than just giving MPs 4 days to debate that budget. We should have, some serious time to debate it properly, to see all the different arguments, so you can tease out the differences between, say, the Treasury and the OBR.
Then you're in danger, perhaps, of a budget being tweaked to the disgruntlement of backbenchers. I mean, that's already been the case with the last one.
That was going to be my last.
Well, I was going to say, and then to the disgruntlement of rival MPs. Why aren't you calling for the Chancellor and indeed the PM, if he knew about the surplus and also didn't tell the public, to resign?
Because I think that the Chancellor needs to come and answer questions in the House of Commons first.
Hang on a minute, Daisy Cooper. How many times in the last Parliament did you repeatedly call for the likes of Boris Johnson and then Rishi Sunak and indeed Liz Truss to resign? Why are you only ever calling for people on the right to resign and not people on the left? Surely if the Chancellor has lied to the public, lied to politicians, lied to the House and misled the markets, it's a resignation offence, open and shut.
Look, in the last Parliament, I think there were very, very good reasons as to why we did call for Boris Johnson and Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak to resign. And if you look,
why were you
British
calling
public
for
came
Rishi
to the same.
Sunak to resign? What did he have to resign over?
I can't remember whether maybe it wasn't him. It was probably many of the other ministers.
Hang on a minute. You'd called for so many people to resign that you can't remember why you called for them to resign.
Well, let's remember
was
the last
it because
Parliament
he
was in such
fined
chaos
for Partygate? So you've called for Boris Johnson to resign over Partygate, Kwasi Kwarteng to resign over the budget chaos, Rishi Sunak over tax affairs and COVID fraud losses. You asked for Priti Patel to resign over refugee handling. You asked for Richard Sharp to resign over the Gary Lineker row. He was the BBC chairman. Let's not forget, and we'll get onto this in a minute, you're constantly asking for Robbie Gibb to resign. And you don't want the Chancellor or the PM to resign when they have been found to have lied in a budget.
Well, on all of those previous cases, we have been asking questions before it got to the point that we called for them to resign. I think the case of Rachel Reeves, she hasn't answered questions yet. No, Boris Johnson was asked several times. He was asked questions in Parliament several times over. He was given many, many occasions to answer questions in the House of Commons chamber.
You were still calling for him to resign before he answered questions in Parliament, though, weren't you?
No, but there were several questions asked.
Is it just because the Lib Dems are quite cosy with Labour and you don't mind it because they're on the left like you are? You'd much rather have a go at righties.
There is absolutely nothing cosy about the Liberal Democrats and Labour right now.
Cosy at they have PMQs on Wednesday.
They are bringing in a stealth tax on both households and on high streets. We have called that out. We have slammed their budget as having nothing in it to promote growth, nothing in it to alleviate the cost of living. That isn't a sign of a cosy relationship. That's us being a constructive opposition that holds the government to account.
What does Ed Davey decide to ask a question of the Prime Minister as his first question as he stands up to address the House? It's about Nigel Farage and Nathan Gill. Now, nail your colours to the mast on this. Nathan Gill, who was the leader of Welsh Reform, has been in prison for 10 years for taking Russian bribes. We now have Ed Davey banging on about it in the House of Commons. What are you saying? Are you accusing Nigel Farage of also taking Russian bribes?
What we're saying is there is a really serious problem of Russian meddling in our democracy.
Right.
And we put pressure on the Prime Minister to call an investigation into Russian interference in our democracy as a whole.
Oh, so not
it was
just
absolutely
reform?
Not just reform, absolutely not. Ed Davey put his question to the Prime Minister, and when the Prime Minister said, oh, yes, of course Nigel Farage should investigate this, but said nothing about whether he as Prime Minister would investigate it, you will have seen all of us Liberal Democrats on the benches starting to heckle and respond to the Prime Minister because we think it's the Prime Minister's duty to hold an investigation into this.
Just to quote Davey in the House, a traitor was at the very top of Reform UK, aiding and abetting a foreign adversary. Nigel Farage and his party are a danger to national security. What evidence have you got to back that up?
The fact that Nathan Gill has just gone to prison.
Yes, but he's no longer in Reform. So why are Nigel Farage and his party now a danger to national security? By implication, you're saying that they're also being paid by Russians? Is that what the Lib Dems are saying?
We're saying that so far they have refused to launch an internal investigation into how this was allowed to happen and whether there's anybody else in their party who had links to him. So we're all putting pressure on Nigel Farage to investigate this. Given that Russia at the moment has invaded Ukraine, they are stealing children, they're abducting children from Ukraine, they're interfering in our democracy.
But by this Liberal Democrat logic, you could conclude a former very high-profile Liberal Democrat, Cyril Smith, who later got found guilty of abusing young boys. Are we saying by implication that all Lib Dems should have been investigated for that at the time that Cyril Smith was exposed?
No, I think what we would say in any situation is where those things have occurred, there has to be investigations into who knew what and when. Is there anybody else that has to be held to account?
Okay.
That is absolutely fine. But our question was not just about reform. We do think that Nigel Farage should conduct an investigation into how this happened.
But do you think he's taking Russian bribes, yes or no?
I've got absolutely no idea. That isn't an allegation.
That's the implication, isn't it?
That is not the implication. That is not the allegation that we're making.
OK.
We are asking him to do an investigation. What we are also doing is asking the Prime Minister of this country to launch a second Russia report to find out the extent of Russian interference in our democracy in any political party.
How many people voted for reform at the last general election?
How many MPs do they have? Look, we can cut this pie many ways, but he is not given a grilling in the same way that other MPs are as well.
First past the post suits you down to the ground now, so I take it the Liberal Democrats have completely abandoned their quest for proportional representation.
No, we are fully behind calls for proportional representation.
Are you?
Yes, we absolutely
even though when you actually win fewer votes than Reform, you end up with how many seats?
Look, if the last
64, Reform ends up with 5. You actually got voted in by 600,000 fewer voters.
Yeah, and we still believe in PR because we are principled about making sure that every single vote in this country actually matters.
Here's an idea, Daisy Cooper. You and Reform could do a joint campaign for PR.
That's not going to happen on my watch.
Because they like the idea of PR. Although I'm wondering whether you parties still like the idea of PR, really, when we've kind of ended up with PR by the back door, haven't we, with a kind of multi-party system now with the Greens and your party, or whatever it's called, also involved.
As a point of principle, we Liberal Democrats continue to support calls for a better proportional system so that everybody's vote actually counts.
All right, well, I'm going to get somebody else in the studio now. Thank you very much, Daisy Cooper. And it is great to see you in the studio on GB News. A Liberal Democrat on GB News is a great thing to see. We'll ask Kemi Badenoch whether she might now want to support proportional representation because of the Tories' numbers in the House. Thank you very much. What a show it's proving to be.
Hello again and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's set to turn much wetter and windier as we move into meteorological winter. Some flooding possible in places on Monday and an amber weather warning in place across parts of Wales. It's all thanks to this frontal system pushing in from the southwest, bringing with it a wedge of much milder air, but the isobars close together, so it will also turn quite a lot windier. And that's the case for this evening as well. So we've already got some rain pushing in from the west. Weather warnings coming into place overnight tonight. So a pretty wet and windy picture for most of us by the time we get to tomorrow morning. The rain particularly heavy out towards the west and over the high ground. After a chilly start to the evening, look at these temperatures by the end of the night, 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. So a much, much milder start to the day on Monday compared to on Sunday. But it will be wet and windy, as I say. Some really blustery winds through the morning across the south and the southwest. Gales around the coasts. Outbreaks of rain as well, particularly persistent over the higher ground of Wales and western parts of England. Some heavy bursts here shown by these brighter shades on the map. Across western parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland. Well, here, something a little bit dry perhaps coming in, at least for a time on Monday morning. Perhaps even a few sunny spells, but still wet across the northeast of Scotland. It stays wet and windy for most of us through the day on Monday, particularly across England and Wales. That rain persistent and heavy for some western areas, so some flooding likely by the afternoon, particularly across Wales. Dry and brighter for many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some sunshine here, but the rain might just flipped once again back across southern parts of Scotland. And look at these temperatures, 12 to 14 degrees Celsius, so a much milder day to come. For Tuesday, it's a bit more straightforward. Sunshine and blustery showers. The wind strongest up towards the northwest, where there'll be some heavy showers, potentially even some rumbles of thunder. Driest towards the east, with the best of the sunshine here. Through the middle part of the week, it stays quite changeable, a mixture of sunshine and showers, but generally temperatures quite close to average for the time of year.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show. What a show it's proving to be, because in the studio is the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch. Lovely to see you this morning. I know you've been going from studio to studio. I'm just going to fill you in on James Murray telling me that it was fine that they were £4.2 billion in surplus and they didn't tell anyone because this is the way that budgets are planned out and she can raise taxes if she wants to. And there was then a to and fro about whether or not there was a 20 billion black hole. Well, that's what officials briefed to the media. So can we just clear this up? Because you're the leader of the opposition. Were you given the impression that there was a 20 billion black hole in Britain's finances on November the 4th?
It was a big press conference, the Cheerios briefing, you may remember. I was giving a speech that day and I had to stop what I was doing to watch it. And I just thought, what on earth was that? Why is she doing this? She knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to pitch-roll higher taxes. She was trying to send a signal to the markets. This is why we have written a letter to the Financial Conduct Authority. We think there may have been some market abuse. But the bottom line, Camilla, is that she told a lie. She said that there wasn't any money. The OBR said that there was, and it's shown evidence that they had told her that. She wanted to raise money for welfare. And that's what she did. Okay. This was a bung for benefits.
On this FCA investigation that you've recommended along with Mel Stride, Dan Hodges has pointed out in the Mail on Sunday that if you are found to have misled the markets, criminal sanctions for insider dealing and market manipulation can incur custodial sentences of up to 10 years and unlimited fines. I mean, it sounds improbable, the idea of a chancellor going to jail about this.
The thing is, if a CEO had behaved like this before they gave an annual report, that's what would be happening. Just coming out, saying things to try and get the bond markets to treat you a little bit more nicely so you can find money for welfare benefits. That is absolutely wrong. But the worst thing is that she's raised taxes now on a lot of working people who are now paying for benefits when they're struggling themselves. Telegraph today talks about £18,000 worse off, the families that are not on benefits. The average family that she's given money to is getting an extra £5,000. That's a lot of money.
Yes.
500,000 families, Rachel Reeves has given an extra £5,000. We think that's wrong, and that's why we would reverse the cap.
We'll get on to welfare in just a minute, because I do want to ask you about your own plans to slash welfare. But on the Chancellor and now the PM, the revelation on the front of the Sunday Tell, he also knew that we were £4.2 billion in surplus. So should they both go?
If he knew, as I tweeted this morning, then yes, he is just as implicated. Because let's remember,
you can't really, this is the trouble. You can say all this, it's rhetoric. You can't really do anything about it. It's the same with Nigel Farage saying, oh, there could be an early general election in 2027. What levers can either of you pull?
Well, what we can do is what Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, has done today. Ask that the Financial Conduct Authority investigate. They may find that we're correct. They may decide that maybe they had just cause. But what I think is really awful is that a lot of people heard what they said. There were some people who drew down their pension because they were worried about what was going to happen. Some people left the country, I'm hearing, because of the talk about the exit tax. Others were fixing their mortgages because they thought it was going to be, so terrible. She came out there, she held that press conference telling everyone that she was going to raise taxes, changed her mind 3 days later, and is now creating, just a gigantic welfare state, which we cannot afford.
All right, well, let's get on to that, because the criticism of the Tories in all this will be as follows, right? It's all very well, you're now talking about tax cuts. You put up taxes 20 different times when you were in office. It was a big tax and spend administration. You actually left a tax burden of 36.1% when Rishi Sunak left office. Meanwhile, welfare, again, it went up under the Conservatives. If you now look at this welfare bill scheduled to go up by 70 billion by the end of Parliament, so it's going to be at £403 billion. James Murray couldn't confirm or deny that, but that's the truth of the statistics. You saying that you're going to cut, what is it, 27 billion? No, 23 billion off welfare. It's not even going to touch the sides. You're going to have to go far further than that commitment.
So let me first of all start by saying I'm not here to say that everything we did in government was perfect. It absolutely
let's hope not,
was
because
not.
The audience will be throwing things at the telly if you say that.
We made mistakes. That's the difference between us and Labour, is that I can stand up and say that previous Conservative governments made mistakes. We've got to own up to that. Here are some of the mistakes we made. We put up taxes too high, and here's how we're going to fix it. That is my job. I can't just say, oh, well, we made mistakes, so, let's just cry into our soup. There are people out there who need solutions. And you're right. What we're talking about is £47 billion. So we're not rushing out with lots of
£47 billion
in terms of savings. It's,
yes.
The 23 billion comes from welfare.
I know,
it's actually
but
£47 billion.
Do you agree with me now that 23 billion isn't enough? Even Jeremy Hunt, who seems to have become more right-wing since he left the Treasury, has suggested that if you restore working age benefits back to what they were pre-pandemic, you'll automatically save 47 billion.
Yes, that's what
I'm saying. Pardon the pun. You're being too conservative with your welfare cuts.
Well, that 47 billion is what I'm talking about. We're starting in a sensible place. Let's go back to 2019 levels. But remember, Camilla, we are the only party that is doing this. Labour, Lib Dems, Reform, SNP, Greens, Plaid. They all wanted that two-child benefit cap lifted. All of them did. So there's only one party that's talking about living within our means.
In Reform's defence, and they've issued a briefing paper about this, they are saying that they want to encourage the birth rate among British citizens. We agree, don't we? We're in a population crisis. Immigrants are having a lot of children. Indigenous Brits, if we can call them that, aren't. So Farage is saying we want to scrap the cap if, and these are the qualifications, both parents are working, both are British citizens. Now, that caveats that policy somewhat, doesn't it?
Do you know what? It may caveat some bits of the policy, but it doesn't address the real issue, which is that we are not growing as an economy. We need growth policies. We didn't see that in the budget. Reform are now caveating this now because they didn't realise what they'd announced previously. And this is what we always get with them. They say stuff, and then they get a realisation that it doesn't work that way, and then they scrabble to try and fix it. We had that cap in place for a good reason. I know, a lot of people make decisions not to have more children that they can't afford. They should not then be paying for other people to have those children.
But then you need to find some kind of magic formula. I asked my brilliant producer, Elizabeth, who does a lot of the research for this show, to find out what the growth rate was in the post-war period, OK? National Institute of Economic and Social Research, it estimated that growth fell from 3.4% a year in the post-war period up to 1973, OK? Then it was up to 2.3% until the 2008 financial crisis. It's averaged 1.2% since. So growth has been sclerotic, anaemic, whatever word you want to choose, under the Tories as it has under Labour. Liz Truss tries to do something about this, and the budget blows up in her face. So why will you be any different?
Because we are starting from a principle of balancing the books. The reason why that mini-budget went wrong is because it had £150 billion of spending on people's energy bills without explaining how we'd pay for it. It was too much spending, not enough when we should have been cutting spending. This is the same thing Labour is doing. A lot of people think that budget didn't work because of tax cuts. It was too much spending. We are saying now, we have our golden economic rule, we're going to make savings, we use the savings to pay down the deficit and tax cuts. We balance the books.
You're not going to be able to afford to scrap stamp duty now, are you? If you got into power in 3 to 4 years' time,
yes, we can.
Totally unaffordable.
Yes, we can. And it is because stamp duty, like many other taxes, actually depresses growth. People aren't buying houses. The housing market's completely gummed up. People aren't buying houses. They're not downsizing, and that means a lot of people starting out their first family want their first home. Sorry, not their first family, get their first home.
Yes.
They're just not buying.
Yeah.
You scrap stamp duty, there are more jobs. people.
It's expensive. How much does it cost to scratch stamp duty?
Well, we had a cautious estimate, about 10 billion. That is cautious. I honestly believe that it won't cost that much, but we're starting with a cautious estimate because we are responsible.
Okay.
Stamp duty will help grow the economy. People hire decorators, they have housing extensions, or they start buying things in the shops. We need to stimulate growth. There are other taxes, like what they're doing on family farms, genuinely going to disrupt farming in our country.
Kemi Badenoch, thank you very much indeed for joining me in the studio once again. Great to see you.
Thank you, Camilla.
Thank you. Well, let's get a reaction from Richard Tice to some of those allegations and also find out what the Deputy Leader of Reform UK makes of the budget. How would Reform do things differently? That's all coming up next.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, and this is your holiday forecast from the Met Office. It's a little bit changeable across Europe over the next week or so. We do have a few showers across the Canary Islands to begin with, but some nice bright sunshine for Spain, maybe just feeling a little bit cooler than normal here. For northern Italy, we do have some heavier showers to begin with, and we do have some nice bright sunnier spells for Greece. Now, it does remain a bit unchangeable over the next few days, but for Tenerife, the temperatures are slowly on the rise.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray,
Are you a human trafficker?
boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okwir, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I hope you're enjoying the show. I certainly am. What fun we've had this morning, and there's more fun to come now because we've got Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, in the studio.
Good morning.
Mr. Tice, right. James Murray reckons it's fine that she didn't tell the public about the 4.2 billion in surplus that she had, courtesy of the OBR, on November the 4th, because it's a process and she can arrange things as she wants, and she wanted more fiscal headroom, which is why they put up tax.
What it was a car crash, and the third car crash this Chancellor has presided over. The first one being the budget 2024, the second car crash being the run-up to this budget, when people literally stopped spending, stopped investing, stopped hiring people, and then the budget itself was a car crash. The Chancellor's shown herself, frankly, to be an untrustworthy learner driver.
Right, so she should go.
Frankly,
Before we crash even more.
Well, basically, confidence is absolutely shattered in her competence, in the numbers, in the huge increase in borrowing forecast by the OBR in just 6 months. I mean, 21 billion more is forecast to be borrowed in this financial year alone. That's over £600 per household, extra debt. So, yeah, confidence is shattered, and frankly, we need a new Chancellor in order to restore confidence in our economy.
Do we need a new Prime Minister? We now find out from the Sunday Telegraph and indeed the Mail on Sunday have splashed that the PM knew about the 4.2 billion surplus as well.
They were clearly making political decisions to prop up the hard left on their deeply socialist party and to increase welfare spending hugely by an extra £16 billion a year by the end of this sort of financial forecast 5-year period. I mean, just to put that in context, that's over £600 per working household, extra money that working families will have to spend on welfare for those people who are not setting their alarm clock at 5 or 6 in the morning and going to work.
But then, as you know, some people are claiming benefits who also work, and that's at the plank. It's kind of the justification for your own decision to support the scrapping of the two-child cap, right?
On working families,
so
two
you're
parents.
saying two parents, both must be working.
And those who are on low incomes, and that's because, of course, all of this is because income tax thresholds have been frozen for many years, and this government's now going to freeze them for longer. Whereas our aspiration, when we've cut the vast amount of wasteful spending, is to lift that income tax threshold so you can make work pay. That's the critical thing in society. It's got to pay to go to work, and for too many people, they're trapped on welfare.
Isn't there just an argument that if the welfare bill is going to be 70 billion higher at the end of this parliament...
It shouldn't be. There's no argument for that.
But it is going to be, because that's the reality of Labour in power right now, Richard Tice, and it's going to hit 403 billion by the end of parliament. I think it's scheduled for 2031, OK? 403 billion quid. Although it's a noble aim, and I presume you're doing it because you're trying to increase the indigenous British population.
But the cost to us of about our policy is about 300 million a year. It's literally a tiny drop in the ocean. Much better is to actually start saving money on welfare.
But
for example, we shouldn't be paying any welfare.
Have babies?
Well, that's part.
Why are you doing it?
Because we want more working families, British families, to have babies. But at the same time, you cut welfare by stopping paying foreign nationals any welfare payments. If people came here to work, the clue's in the word work.
Yeah.
And so you've got to do that. We've got to have a higher international health surcharge. We've got to cut the vast amount of grotesquely wasteful foreign aid spending. We discover we're sending tens and tens of millions of pounds to people like the Lebanese police force and to Turkey. This is insane.
A quick question on Nathan Gill. Daisy Cooper, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, is in here calling for an investigation into any of you taking Russian money. Are any of you taking Russian money?
Of course not. It's just ridiculous.
Well, why won't you have an investigation?
What we've
called
for, I'll tell you what, we've got nothing to hide. What we've called for, let's have an investigation into all overseas interference into politics. And do you know where that starts? It starts with China and their relationship with the Labour Party.
You're actually agreeing with the Lib Dems, then, because she wants to...
We've called for a full inquiry into all overseas interference. And I tell you what, the reason Labour won't do it, as the government of the day, is because it will expose their close links to the Chinese regime. Whether it's giving away the Chagos Islands, whether it's the collapse of the spy case, whether it's a senior MP receiving hundreds of thousands...
Can we talk about Russians for a minute?
Talk about who you want. I mean...
just to channel... God help us, my inner Alistair Campbell and Carol Cadwallader.
Lucky you.
If there's nothing to see here and there are no links between the Russians and reform, you may as well carry out a comprehensive and robust independent investigation yourselves.
No one would trust an inquiry. Have a national inquiry into all overseas interference. The reason the government won't do that is because of their links to China. And, of course, the collapse of the spy case. And now we've got the mega embassy that's about to be approved, we think, next month.
OK. Kemi Badenoch has suggested that Nigel Farage, if he did make a Jewish schoolboy feel uncomfortable and the victim of anti-Semitism while they were at Dulwich College, that he should actually turn around to this bloke and apologise. Yes, he may have said it as a young man. I appreciate that what we say in our teenage years isn't necessarily something that we carry through. Some people, for instance, are socialists when they're teenagers and then become righties when they
start paying tax.
When they're over the age of 40. But to be very serious about this, an allegation of anti-Semitism that Nigel Farage was going around saying to Jewish students jokes about gassing Jews, it's totally unacceptable, isn't it?
And it is completely unacceptable. But the point is, there is no one who has stood up for the Jewish community more than Reform UK. We were the first people. We were the first people who called for these hideous pro-Palestine marches to be banned.
But why doesn't he apologise to this BAFTA-winning director?
Because he's very. These allegations are 49 years old. Why weren't they made 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 50? I'll tell you why, because they're made up.
No,
they're absolutely made up.
To be fair, Michael Crick, who I interviewed on my other outlet, the Daily Tea podcast for The Telegraph, he wrote a book about this because he had done a Channel 4 Dispatches documentary about whether or not Nigel Farage was, quotes, racist. He concluded, and let's be honest, I don't think Michael Crick is necessarily aligned to Reform or indeed Nigel Farage, that he wasn't racist, but he had been anti-Semitic when he was younger. So he needs to own that, doesn't he?
No, I don't think he needs to own anything at all like that. Look, the reality is that these allegations are made up by people with a serious political bias who don't want Nigel to be Prime Minister. And
so any criticism that is made of any of you, you can just brush it off saying it's biased.
Can you remember what you said 49 years ago?
I can remember most things, and I don't think I ever went around joking about gassing the Jews. Not least because I was at school.
I think all of this. I think this is nonsense.
I don't think I'd ever have said anything like this.
I think this is all nonsense. I don't think any of us would have said things. I think this is just made up by people who've got a serious political action.
All right, Richard Tice, thank you very much as ever. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's set to turn much wetter and windier as we move into meteorological winter. Some flooding possible in places on Monday and an amber weather warning in place across parts of Wales. It's all thanks to this frontal system pushing in from the southwest, bringing with it a wedge of much milder air, but the isobars close together, so it will also turn quite a lot windier. And that's the case for this evening as well. So we've already got some rain pushing in from the west. Weather warnings coming into place overnight tonight. So a pretty wet and windy picture for most of us by the time we get to tomorrow morning. The rain particularly heavy out towards the west and over the high ground. After a chilly start to the evening, look at these temperatures by the end of the night, 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. So a much, much milder start to the day on Monday compared to on Sunday. But it will be wet and windy, as I say. Some really blustery winds through the morning across the south and the southwest. Gales around the coasts. Outbreaks of rain as well, particularly persistent over the higher ground of Wales and western parts of England. Some heavy bursts here shown by these brighter shades on the map. Across western parts of Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland. Well, here, something a little bit dry perhaps coming in, at least for a time on Monday morning. Perhaps even a few sunny spells, but still wet across the northeast of Scotland. It stays wet and windy for most of us through the day on Monday, particularly across England and Wales. That rain persistent and heavy for some western areas, so some flooding likely by the afternoon, particularly across Wales. Dry and brighter for many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland.